Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of 7 Days to Sunday, presented by FanDuel. I'm Western New Yorker and, of course, SiriusXM NFL Radio and SiriusXM Sports, Zig Fracassi. Pleased to be joined every week, as I am, by, of course, the legend of Tulsa football is in their Hall of Fame, and, of course, a standout on the gridiron with the Buffalo Bills, and apparently now the ace of college basketball, from what I hear, my guy, Mr. Jerry Ostrowski. What's going on, my brother?
I don't know, Zig. I get lucky every now and then. I filled out one bracket. I got all four Final Four teams right. So
Oh, you did?
yeah.
Congratulations.
So I'm excited about that. And unfortunately, when I get into these big money deals, I don't do well. I get I flame out quickly. But
All
it's
right.
the charity ones that don't have much to them. I do well in those. So but no, I'm excited about it. Obviously, Final Four basketball is great. I'm a Big East guy. Always will be a Big East guy.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm pulling for UConn, and
There you go.
been some good games so far.
Yeah, sure have. And, of course, UConn women also making the Final Four, so they got a dynasty going up there in
See,
stores.
that's my guy.
Oh,
Gino's
you
my
love
guy.
you're a Gino guy, huh?
Yeah. So Gino's from the same. We're born in the same town. We're from Norristown, Pennsylvania. We're both born in the same town.
Oh,
Same
okay.
town as
Mike Piazza.
same guy Piazza, and some other bum named Tommy Lasorda.
Tommy Lasorda.
who actually was buddies with Mike's dad, which is why Mike ended up being a 60-some round pick of the Dodgers, and that's how he ended up being there. But yeah, Gino was a Norristown guy. I actually coached at Bishop Kenrick, which was the high school my father went to,
Okay.
the Catholic school there in Norristown. So yeah, I've always been a big Gino fan. My pops has always been a big Gino fan, and so yeah, hopefully the girls get it done also.
Very good. Of course, we're going to focus back to football and obviously a lot of Bills discussion as we get closer to the draft. Anything stick out from you? I mean, Bean talked about a few things, maybe going for a wide receiver in the draft. Obviously, they got the thing taken care of with Kincaid and all that. But anything really stick out you from these 2 days of meetings in Arizona?
Not too much. I think a big deal with Bean as far as 26 goes, I think the Bills are actually, as far as later draft picks go, sitting in a pretty damn good spot. I mean, I think 26, if they want to stick and pick, somebody that they covet's going to fall to them. I really believe that, whether it be a wide receiver or a linebacker or a defensive lineman, an edge guy or an interior guy. I mean, somebody's going to be there for them that I think that they've got rated at that spot. Now, the thing is, does Bean still want to try to obtain extra picks? We don't know that. We'll see what happens on draft night. But like I said, I think that somebody is going to fall to him at 26. And I do believe that wide receiver is still in play, even with trading for DJ Moore. But no, I mean, Brady had some interesting things to say, obviously, talking about Josh Allen, who basically couldn't walk most of the end of the season, brought up some things about wanting some I guess he would say he welcomes a little nastiness in the locker room. He wants to stir things up. You think that's beneficial for team culture? Well, we'll see how that goes, because he's getting ready to get what he wants out of C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and of course always some sort of comment about Keon Coleman. So nothing earth-shattering, but some interesting stuff.
Yeah, and I think since the last time we chatted, Corbett and Cushenberry, the third, and there was another player added to the mix too. So some competition, it's always welcome.
Trent Sherfield, former wide receiver of the Bills, got signed back, and there's going to be some spots in that wide receiver open, Zig, that are up for grabs. And Sherfield, a guy who's a really good teams guy, blocks in the field, kind of, I guess you could say. My man that was with the Bills 2 years ago, that's now in New England, that walked around with no shoes.
And, Mac Hollins.
He's like another version of Mac Hollins,
but
probably
shoes.
Wears footwear and clothing
yes.
to the games. But no, I think that all those guys, especially the two offensive linemen, are intriguing. The Corbett guy, Zig, has had some issues staying healthy. If he stays healthy, he's a very, very good football player. So if he can find that area that he had, I think it was like in 2021, 22 in there, or 22, 21, 22, 23, where he played all the games. He's a good football guy. We'll provide a challenge for the rest of them to play. I think Cushenberry was a guy that was probably going to be the answer if Connor McGovern left.
Right.
Connor McGovern comes back, and now he's a viable veteran backup that probably could play some guard in a pinch if he needed to. So I think those two guys are fine. I still think they'll still draft one later in the draft, even though they signed these two dudes. But, they need to keep those numbers up at that offensive line position because they have dwindled a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. 7 Days to Sunday continues, presented by FanDuel. There was a lot of things passed among the competition committee at the meetings. I think a couple, Jerry, and you and I were talking a little bit about this off air and kind of caught our attention. A couple of the big ones I thought were, again, both brought up by the competition committee. First was to allow league personnel to consult with on-field officials when considering disqualifications for both flagrant football acts and non-football acts without being called on the field. And I think maybe some of that goes back to that altercation with the fan with DK Metcalf with the Steelers last year in Detroit.
Right. I think Zig is the referees, the officials have a hard enough time as it is managing these games. The speed of the games and the amount of processing that the human mind of an official has to go through to break down these rules that they've been given to interpret.
Right.
I just don't think the human brain operates fast enough and it can't see it all, right? So, yeah, obviously, if you've got the technology, which, I mean, let's face facts, Zig. I mean, these NFL stadiums nowadays, they can find somebody's, they can scan somebody's retina in the crowd to figure out if they're, if they should be there or not, right? So if we can do that, I would think that maybe we could manage some things from a command center as far as disqualifications, whether it be through physical action or, something with a fan or an off-field altercation that, warrants somebody to step in. So I just think that a lot of this stuff, Zig, and we talked a little bit about it, maybe get your thoughts on it. I think the NFL is setting some things up with this possible strike with the referees.
Well, yeah.
That they're going to start implementing some of this AI stuff and cameras and technology to maybe in the future start taking over more and more of that from the actual on-field officials.
Well, and that actually, Jerry, leads to the other, I think, really significant one here, which is for 1 year only, and that allows the officiating department to correct clear, obvious mistakes made by on-field officials that impact the game in the event that there's a work stoppage involving the game officials represented by the NFL Referees Association. And for people wondering, the CBA between the league and the Refs Association, that expires, I want to say May 31st. So you still have roughly 2 months to try to get something done. But it seems like there's a lot of rancor back and forth. I was reading Scott Green, a former head official. I think he was involved with that scenario in 2012 when we had the replacement of officials.
Right.
And all I need to say to you, my friend, is fail Mary, the Green Bay Seattle fiasco in the end zone. So, but you and I were discussing this, and maybe these officials are getting a touch little greedy for what they're actually compensated.
We have a white hat that lives in Tulsa, a guy I know very, very well, the Clay Martin.
Sure.
He's been a high school basketball coach here in town. He's been a principal at AD. I think, he's had worn a lot of hats. We'd like to get him on the radio with us here in town, but I don't think there's any way he's going to be able to come on and talk about what's going on.
Yeah,
he probably couldn't. So, obviously, again, it's like we talked about, they have this technology sitting there. It's just a matter of, are they going to implement it and really kind of dig into it to see how viable it is? This gives them an opportunity. I read something the other day, and I think it's spot on. You had talked about the last time there was a strike, and the ownership kind of waited and waited and waited. Then at the last minute, when they saw something wasn't going to get done, they scrambled to onboard these college officials. And, one thing about ownership, you might get them once, you're not going to get them twice.
Right.
And so that's why you're seeing them pull those college officials in now and start to, identify who they want to bring in to call games because they're going to allow them to get up to speed, give them crash courses in the classroom, and all those things. Because if somewhere down the road these guys get an opportunity to call games in the NFL, like you talked about earlier, Zig, I mean, you're talking about the average salary of an official in the NFL is $385,000, and that's not a full-time job.
That's a part-time gig, yeah.
That's a part-time gig. Most of these guys are selling insurance. They're professionals. They're doing whatever in their hometowns.
Sure.
Then they fly out to go call games. And, the NFL's their proposal was, I believe, a 6.85% or 6.75% pay increase annually over the 6-year period. So eventually they're going to be over $400,000.
Right.
But it's interesting. I think the one thing that the NFL has in their pocket is what we talked about. They've got this technology, and maybe this is the time they're going to test it and really see how this fits in the game.
Absolutely. So 7 days to Sunday continues. It's presented by FanDuel. Jerry, I'm actually starting to work up an appetite here thinking about all these scenarios, huh?
I bet you are. And, obviously the Anchor Bar is the place we go. It's a proud sponsor of the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network. We love the Anchor Bar in 17 cities across America. We had a guy talk about going to one in Chicago the other day, that enjoying the food. We know there's one down in Raleigh, and there's one in Dallas area. Tucson. So got them all over the country. Jumbo wings, always fresh, never frozen, variety of sauces and dry rubs to your liking. Hopefully they have no ranch in the house. It's only blue cheese. But if you don't want wings, they have other great Buffalo delicacies like beef on weck. They got that fine pepperoni pizza and everything else you can get your hands on. So Anchor Bar, home of the original Buffalo wing, invented by Frank and Teresa Bellissimo back in 1964. They are proud sponsors of the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network, and we thank them for it.
Absolutely. And speaking of Fina, his son was absolutely brilliant on the air the other day. Of course, we're talking about Bruno, the left tackle from Duke, who hopefully that young man has his name called at some point during the NFL draft. Ryan Harris, who's my co-host this past weekend, of course, the former Notre Dame standout and Super Bowl 50 champ with the Denver Broncos. We were both blown away by him. I mean, the young man not only excelling on the field, was I think the first ever, Jerry, their first ever 3,000-yard passer, 1,000-yard receiver, 1,000-yard rusher in Duke history, all in the same season. Bruno had a lot to do with that. And now he's working on his third degree. I think it's in business management. The kid was just so impressive. So wanted to throw a shout out to him, and hope again. He told us the Raiders have been in contact with him, and I think the Bears were going to visit with him down at Duke earlier this week too. So
awesome. Yeah, Bruno's done a great job. I've known him throughout the years, but got a really good chance to spend some time with him over a 3-4 day period last year around the 4th of July. Bruno and his brother Roman, who is a freshman this year at Duke, he's, if you can believe this, as smart as Bruno is, I think Roman's even smarter. I mean, he's really off the charts smart. Those guys flew down to Tulsa, and we got an opportunity to work in Oklahoma City with a real good buddy of mine, J.R. Conrad, who played at OU, was the Parcells guy in the NFL, played with the Patriots and the Jets for a little while, followed Bill around. And we got to work with those guys for 3-4 days in Trench Mafia, doing O-line drills and things like that, and kind of working on some things that Bruno wanted to get better at before the season started. And just to watch his brain turn and how he approached his work, and how he looked at things, and stayed in contact with him throughout the season. And he would send me clips and be like, hey, check this pass set out. What do you think? And just knew that, it's one thing to play. It's another to have that sort of mentality. And it meant, you could just tell it meant something to him. And, John and I both been blessed. We've got really good kids.
Yes.
Kids that have played college football, that are smart guys, smart kids. And, obviously, like I've told many people, Zig, if I ever write a book about these kids of ours, the title of the book would be called Moms Make the Difference. Because it ain't got a damn thing to do with me and John. It's about our wives and what they do for these kids. And obviously Melissa, his wife, and Jamie, my wife, Tremendous Moms. And so, yeah, that would be the name
That's
of my book.
beautiful.
It'd be Moms Make the Difference. So good luck to Bruno. Hope we hear his name. And if not, he'll get with it an opportunity. And
Oh,
that's what it's
yeah.
all about, is getting an opportunity.
That's right. Hey, and you know what? Being an undrafted free agent may not be such a bad thing because you get to pick where you play. So
Yeah.
it's not such a bad thing.
And it's just get your foot in the door.
Exactly.
And then, do your thing. And sometimes it takes a little bit of luck, like it did with me. And next thing you know, you're hanging out for 8 to 10 years.
Yep. And making a great name like you did with the Bills during your playing time. So, boy, it depends on what you read. And again, I respect these people that do mock drafts and everything like that. And it seems as though with the Bills, the indications I get are, and this might be something I would consider doing. I know that the possibility is there if the receiver they want maybe slides to 26, they grab him. But I think with the multitude of needs they have, not only receiver, but O-line depth, and I think you could use, enhancements on every level of the defense.
Right.
I don't know. To me, my friend, why not trade down, stockpile picks, get value that way? Maybe that's the way I would approach it if I'm Brandon Beane and this Bills draft class in 2026.
And I appreciate that. I really do. And I think it's something you've got to look at because you need to get, it'd be nice to get that second round pick back, Zig. It'd be nice to maybe pick up one or two other picks, especially what you hope for is that the team that's trying to trade to 26 is a team that wants Ty Simpson or they want a quarterback. Because then you can charge the quarterback tax. You can ask for a little bit more because you know why that team is moving into that spot. So maybe you can pick up another, couple picks. Me personally, though, I just think that at 26, Brandon Beane's going to have some tough decisions to make because I really believe there's going to be at least one, probably two, maybe three players that he covets are going to be available at that 26 spot. And then you've got to go to the next line of thinking, Zig, which what's coming next. If I do make a move,
yes,
will one of those three be there with where I move to in the second round? Because if it is, say it is Arizona,
right,
and they want to make that move, Arizona's the second pick of the second round, I believe. So, you'd think
slid down what, about 8 spots maybe then?
You'd think 8 spots and you'd have an opportunity to get one of those guys.
Well,
but still, you're rolling the dice.
Yeah, and it's amazing, how much steam Ty Simpson's gotten within the last few weeks, isn't it?
Well, I watched him live in Oklahoma, and I was impressed with him. And the thing that I was impressed about was his competitive edge. He competes.
Yeah.
He wasn't feeling good. He had done something to his back a couple weeks before or a week before in the playoffs. He rolled in with a busted up back, but he was still running the football, still taking shots from that really good Oklahoma defense.
Right.
And he didn't step down. I mean, he wasn't backing down. Right. And that impressed me about the kid. I think he's got more of a pro style to his play than maybe some of the others. Might be a little bit physically limited on some of the things he can do, especially with arm strength, but I think he would be fine. It'd be interesting if it's not the Cardinals, is it the Jets or somebody to try to move in there. So I don't know. Me personally, Zig, I really like the idea of going receiver with that pick. And honestly, unless a guy like Jordan Tyson falls that far, and he might considering he's a 19, I'm like a lot of others. I really like Casey Concepcion from A&M.
Yeah, so do I.
I like his skill set. I like what he brings to the table. Plus, he's a punt returner. He's a kick returner.
And his dad's from Rochester, which would be kind of,
Right. Not only is his dad from Rochester, there's a lot of things you got to look at. And, it's funny because people are kind of down on the kid for the drops, right? The people that don't want this receiver pick, the first thing they're going to go to is drops. Okay. Yeah. Go to
Jerry
drops.
Rice had the drops too. How did he turn out?
Jerry had the drops. And if I remember correctly, your new head coach that you love, he wrote a thing one summer when he was at LSU called the Summer of 10,000 Catches. And it was how It was how he developed Jarvis and those guys
That's right.
and worked on their eye, their eye concentration, looking at the ball as opposed to, the mechanics of catching it. It was more had to do with vision than it did mechanics. And so, yeah, I don't think he would shy away from a guy that maybe has a little bit of a drop issue. But like I said before, I think his drop issue has more to do with a quarterback that throws a horrible football than it does his ability as a receiver.
Or do you hope, and I know you've talked about this kid a few different times already, maybe if the Howell kid from A&M slides, or even
Right.
an R. Mason Thomas, because the Bills could use some help with the edge there.
I think the thing about R. Mason is I think R. Mason falls into that second round. If you were to move, if you were to move into that upper part of the second round, I think you have a legitimate shot at an R. Mason Thomas at that spot. I think R. Mason Thomas is fine. I think he plays hard. I don't necessarily think he has quite the full repertoire of pass rush, cachet, so to speak, or I think he's still a little bit raw and developing but as far as being an athlete, bend, all those things, plays his tail off, tough kid. I mean, if you watch the strip sack or whatever it was at Tennessee when they beat Tennessee at home,
right.
He tears his quad running that ball in, trying to run that ball in, and still keeps going with a torn quad.
Wow.
Tough kid. So as far as Cassius Howell goes, we've got the short arm brigade across the country that wants to really, really punish kids because of arm length. I'll say this much. I do think it is important in some areas. If I was really asking Cassius Howell to be a two-way player and really be a guy that can play the run, then I would be concerned. I don't think that's what he does. He's a ghost rush in space guy that's a tremendous athlete that can bend and move, and he's not a power guy. I mean, he can go to it if he needs to as a backup, but that's not what he's based off of. So the lack of length doesn't shake me as much because he's not really that type of player. So I can get away from it a little bit, but I think he's a guy that's tremendous as well. So, hey, man, if what happens if you're at 26 and all of a sudden Cassius Howell and Casey Concepcion, both from A&M, are sitting there? What do you do?
I know. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, and again, but I think we're both in agreement that if whatever they do, whether they keep the pick, maybe even move up or trade down, that at least that first selection has to be a need pick, right?
Yeah, it does, but I've said this a million times, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it till this whole thing's over with.
1,000,001. Here we go.
1,000,001. The new guy gets all the shiny things.
Yep.
And Joe Brady's the OC. And he's made comments already about how this guy, pointing at Brandon Beane, didn't get me an offensive player until like the 6th or 7th round or whatever. No, until Jackson Halls. Jackson Halls was the first offensive player in the draft last year that Beane took. So with that being said,
right. Yeah,
I would have to think if the boss man wants a wideout, he's going to get a wideout. I just really am curious, Zig, and I don't know if the Bills think this way or not, and obviously we'll find out. I like Howell, I like Concepcion because I think his skill set differentiates itself, right?
Right.
I think it's different than anything we have. But, do they like a guy like an Omar Cooper Jr., who I think has a good chance
the
of being
Indiana kid, yeah.
Right, the Indiana kid, who I think is kind of a redundant skill set to DJ Moore.
Right.
Would it be bad to have two DJ Moores? I don't know. I think if we do go that route, I think you're going to really want the athletic home run hitter type of guy. I think that Concepcion's that dude. But there are some other guys that are intriguing to me.
Oh, Denzel
Boston, who I think is, again, I don't tell me about a receiver that's got a wide catch radius that catches the ball in traffic. We had that. We fought that last year, right? We fought that basketball guy last year or 2 years ago when we took Keon Coleman, and we're still chasing it. But I keep going to this guy, and I know a lot of people have brought him up and think about later rounds, but I'm a big fan of Bryce Lance, man, at North Dakota State. I
Yep.
really am. I love the kid. I think he's a hell of a player, and he's a good kid, works hard, tough program up there in Fargo. I like him as well. Maybe that's a guy you go to if you don't go receiver with your first round pick.
Or another one that I'm intrigued with, although he's coming off an ACL, is Chris Bell from
Right,
Louisville.
right. And that's a good pick, Zig. I mean, that's a guy that you could bring in and slowly bring him along.
Yep.
And you think about the room right now, the way it is, you don't have to rush him, right?
No.
You don't have to rush him. So I think he'd be a guy that could, and I think he's come in or is going to come in for a 30 visit. So I know that, yeah, I mean, that's somebody they're looking at. I like that. I like that as well.
There you go. I'm putting my GM hat on as we speak here. 7 days to Sunday continues, presented by FanDuel. Don't you got to zip along here, Ostrowski?
I do. And, you know, one of the things I did before I was doing all this content creation and going back on the radio was I was in medical sales. And all the time there were people that were coming up to you, hey, I want a job in med sales. I want a job in med sales. But it was those guys that, you know, came up to you and you know, you knew that they were qualified by what they took in school, but also you knew they, through their general interest, you had an inkling of what they were about and if they were, you know, perfect for the role that you had. And, you know, it usually influenced our decision on who we picked to be a member of our team. And when you look at it, you know, these guys were eager to learn more about the job. I knew that, you know, you knew that they wanted to work for you. They seemed like a good fit. And that excitement was always that thing that puts you over the top. And, you know, when you're hiring and you want a candidate, passion's a big part of this because you only get so much from a resume, right? I mean, you can only get so much from looking at paper and you can only get this sort of insight on a true candidate is, you know, you get that from ZipRecruiter. And now you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/audio. And ZipRecruiter's powerful matching technology finds qualified candidates quickly. And ZipRecruiter has a new feature that shows you the most interested qualified candidates first so that you can meet those types of people faster. So you don't have to call all these names. That's what I was talking about earlier. You know these guys are interested. You know they're good for your job. Now ZipRecruiter does that for you. They put those most interested qualified candidates up front that you can choose them, you know, and have those guys ready to roll and get them streamlined into the position that's open. And it's, you know, things like this, it makes it, you know, not a shock that ZipRecruiter is the number one rated hiring site based on G2. So 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a qualified candidate within the first day. Try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/audio. That's ZipRecruiter.com/audio. Meet your match on ZipRecruiter.
Absolutely. And of course, 7 days to Sunday is presented by FanDuel. And of course, we got the Final Four on Saturday. Jerry, you got the matchups. Illinois taking on UConn, and Michigan and Arizona should be a couple of dynamite matchups. And in fact, the fine folks that if you go to sportsbook.fanduel.com, you can catch all the point spreads there. And even looking ahead to Monday, they project what the point spreads would be there. But for Saturday, it looks like Illinois is the 2.5 point favorite. You're over under 139.5. And then you've got Michigan. They are favored by 1.5 against Arizona. As I put my old man glasses on, the total there 157.5. So those are your Final Four point spreads for Saturday.
I've got the Arizona Wildcats, man.
Because of
I
Fina?
got the Wildcat. No, I just think they're good. I think they're a really good basketball team. I got them in UConn in the final. So
not bad.
Yeah, that's right. That's where I am. I like Illinois as well. My really good friend Josh Whitman, who at one time was a tight end in the preseason for the Buffalo Bills, and stayed at my house. Good friend of mine. We had the same agent. He's the AD at Illinois, so I would not be upset if Illinois won either.
Nice.
So, but yeah, got some ties there to the teams in the Final Four.
There you go. Yeah.
Any last thoughts, Stig, before we get out of here?
Just definitely looking forward to, upcoming shows as we get closer, to the NFL draft. I think now, I was reading that Brandon Beane and his staff are going to hunker down starting Thursday in Orchard Park. And I'm sure now this is going to be that type of information, Jerry, where all right, Scout A did his series of reports. Scout B did his series of reports. Now it's like, let's try to make sense of all this without, your head coming off its mount because of all the information and the overload you might have.
I really would like to. One of the things I'd love to do, I'd love to be in a war room.
Yes.
I'd love to draft. I'd love to be in a war room. I'd love to be in a war room a month. I'd like to spend the lead up month. If I could get to where.
Well, you got to pull your next
from
build.
the combine, from the combine to the last day of the draft. If I could spend like an internship with somebody, I would love that.
Go to a pro day, maybe. Sure.
Right. And I've actually been to a pro day. I went to one down in Norman. I've actually been to pro days at Tulsa. But I wonder nowadays, Zig, and we're talking about it with the officiating, just how much these GMs rely on AI and chat GPT, if they have a way to generate drafts and generate draft scenarios through AI. Because we know that you can put a game in the AI and have like 1,000 different outcomes, right?
Yes.
And they'll show you who does the computer pick more than the other, right?
Yep.
I wonder if they do this with the draft and they run these draft scenarios through the chat GPT and the AI and show and can get probabilities of who's going to do what. I think that would be awful cool.
Or do you, I don't know if Bean or any of these other GMs do that, but say Scout A through the years recommended more picks and ultimately they hit.
Yeah.
Does Bean lean on Scout A more is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, I think there's no doubt. And maybe that's where Doug Majeski, he kind of goes through that, and then Doug brings that to Bean. But there's got to be some of that.
Yes.
Got to be some of that.
Absolutely.
So,
well, I lean on us being excellent like we always are. What do you think of that?
I think you're 100% correct. And as always, folks, it's 7 days of Sunday on a Wednesday night, 8 Eastern, 7 Central. And hit the like, hit the subscribe. Tell your friends, review the show. We'll be back next week with more on the Buffalo Bills. We'll start getting even more and more in depth on this draft and maybe some candidates, positions, and things like that as we get closer to the draft. But as always, folks, I'm the Big O, Jerry Ostrowski, Sig for Kasi. Thanks for watching, and we appreciate you as always. Much love, and go Bills.
Go Bills.
I feel the same.